Today I have the pleasure of speaking to Dan. Dan, would you like to introduce yourself and your business to the community?
Hi Sarah, thank you for having me today. My name is Dan Lewis. I'm the founder and managing director of freeagent247.com, and our elevator pitch, we'll go with that for brevity now, is we are a unique and personal service estate agency where selling your home is absolutely free. There we go.
How does that work?
That is a good question. How in depth would you like me to go, Sarah?
You do you, however you want to tell it. Tell how that works.
Thank you. Yeah. So the main sort of outskirts of what we do is we are in every sense a traditional estate agency. I say in every sense of how we operate on a day-to-day basis. We don't have sort of the shop frontage. We have a sort of centralized HQ office that services the county of mainly Worcestershire. But as we've sort of grown over the last 4-5 years now, we have been invited to and sold into neighbouring counties, Herefordshire, Gloucestershire, the 3 counties first and foremost, and then further afield into sort of Oxfordshire, Warwickshire, and sort of more recently into London, where we'll go for sort of bespoke properties. But our core focus is Worcestershire, and the 3 counties. In terms of how we do what we do, we basically provide all of the what we feel is the best possible marketing to help sell a property. So right from sort of staging if required, decluttering, helping people with advice on what to do before their property is marketed, to then actually bringing the property to market, and sort of engaging then what we call our free agent media team, our family. Is abbreviation. So we have a team of photographers, professional photographers, videographers, floor planners, and then I always use the word matterporters. I haven't quite picked up a word for that yet, but lots of people don't quite know what that means as well. So it's basically when you do like a Google Earth of a property, and it zooms in, you can go around the property itself, sort of as a still and walk through at your own pace, basically. So we provide all of what we feel is the best possible marketing to help sell a property, and bring the property to market. We then have a sort of strategic launch for each property. As I say at the start of when I went into this, we then follow it through in every sense, a traditional sense. So a board, carry out the viewings on the property. We front all of the costs for the marketing. There's no hidden cost, no extra cost, no cost at all. And then the huge sort of caveat swing is whereby when we find a buyer for the property, our buyers, if they don't like the property, they won't buy the property. Simple as that in a nice way. But if they come forward and like the property, it's our job obviously to negotiate the best price we can for our client, which is the vendor. They instruct us to ask for a buyer's fee from the buyer, a very small percentage that gets paid from the buyers through solicitors. So it's all done legally, and they only pay that on completion. Yep. So nobody pays anything other than me, in a nice way. Sort of buying, we as a company take the risk of the cost of marketing the property and the time and the effort that we put into selling it. And until the actual day of completion, nobody earns anything or pays anything from there. So it's nice and clear, and everyone sort of very, very transparent as such, because everyone knows what to expect. Having worked in a estate agency sort of 10, 11 years before setting up Free Agent, there's lots of different charges and fees going out there, but I do like the clarity of what we offer. Basically, that's something that sits very well with me, and has worked fantastically well as a business. So very grateful for that.
Amazing. And it just sounds like you've taken all of the complication out of buying and selling.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, Sarah. From our perspective, yeah, I think we like to sort of treat every property and every client as has the same facilities of what we offer. So whether that's we've sold riverside lodges at sort of 50,000 to multi-million-pound mansions, and they all benefit from the same team and the same sort of service. irrelevant of value, which again I quite like, you know. So it doesn't matter what it is. You know, everyone's home is their castle at the end of the day, isn't it? And I'd like that, again, clarity in terms of the complications out of the sale. There's still, you know, boxes to tick and hoops to jump in terms of the conveyancing side of things, which is still you know, a challenging canal path to take, shall we say. But from our side of things, we try to, yeah, simplify it as much as possible in terms of what we offer, how we offer it, and how it's structured, and the transparency of that. So it is very, very clear. And there's always complications with sales and conveyancing, but c'est la vie. And that, you know, they're only, you know, it's there obviously to make sure things are checked and done rightly at the end of the day, isn't it? So.
Completely. Thank you so much. Do you have a particular story or a customer that you could share with us, one that sticks in your mind?
And just in terms of what? Sorry, Sarah. We can cut
just something
quick,
that just one of those stories where you go, either you've learned something, or it was just a great success, or somebody didn't think they could sell and you've sold it.
Yeah, okay. There's a couple in my head that jump out. So yeah, there's one particular property, Sarah, of what we dealt with. It was actually on the market with a couple of agents before us, very, very good agents in their own ways. You know, superbly marketed, you know, very good local brand, and then a more sort of national brand is what I'd call it. And it was a bit of a, let's call it like an Achilles property. It sort of was right on the main road, right next to the river. It actually marooned when it flooded. There's this sort of river, so it sort of was in its own sort of ground. It didn't ever flood the property itself, but of course it sort of caused a lot of concern for buyers, basically. And one of the approaches that we like to do, you know, is to say that going down that transparency route, which I appreciate, not for everyone, but it's certainly how we operate. You know, I come along and it didn't sell with those first two agents, so we were the third agent. There's an interesting stat actually, pre-COVID, 66% of properties used to sell with a second agent or more. This was during COVID, and I think that's shifted since then, but just for the statisticians out there, I'll get it out, promise you. So yeah, anyway, we come along and, you know, yeah, we have a creative marketing team. You know, we did things differently. We threw drones over the property to show where the property was in exact correlation to the river. We actually had then a video of when the property or the grounds around the property flooded. And then I actually talked over that, did a descriptive sort of speech on where the property lies and how it lies and how the flood alleviation scheme around it works. So it was very, very much hitting the sort of, you know, the potential problem on the head, that it doesn't flood, and this is what happens when the water comes around, and here's proof of that in a video format with descriptive from myself and then the vendor themselves. They were sort of receptive to doing that, and had details about the insurance, how all of the sort of nitty-gritty stuff works, so quite in depth with it. We actually put that as part of the presentation of the property. So alongside our nice glossy sort of video, which was selling the property, we also went, right, here's a practical question. And the first thing you're going to ask is what happens when the river floods. So here's what happens when, and sort of put a package together to show that. You know, we then successfully sold that property. You know, obviously, I think that part of how we approached it very differently there. So yeah, when we actually then went on to sell the property and agree a sale actually over the asking price, and I do think a large part of why we were able to do that was the hitting the nail on the head, basically, about here's the potential issues, here's what you're all going to ask as potential buyers. It's the first thing I'd ask if I was looking at that property. It's very, very natural. So let's get some very clear, concise information out there that shows it for what it is. And you know, obviously the vendors thought we were knights in shining armor and all the rest of it, which was nice and lovely. I think it was just sort of going down very, very simple. This is what you're going to come up against, and let's deal with it this way. Fortunately, you know, timing is everything in the sale of property. You know, we were there at the right time with the right buyer who understood the sort of risk factors there. As such, although they weren't risk factors in a sense, but understood what they were taking on from how we marketed and went forward, and you know, fantastically beautiful sale that was in the end, and everyone was very, very happy. So yeah, that's something again that I like to tell that story, because it's again about that sort of going down that transparency route of dealing with something and hitting the nail on the head, basically.
No, perfect. What a great example. Thank you so much. The next question is, were there any business changes you considered that COVID made a necessity?
Yes and no. We were just over 2 years old when sort of COVID come about. So we were just moving into our second year. We were moving quite fast at the time in terms of the volume and the sort of expansion of the company and what we were coping with as a sort of smaller startup, shall we say. So we were on the point of taking, I think there was maybe 2-3 people on at the time of COVID, and some office premises, which I managed to U-turn on all of that actually at the sort of 23rd hour, which was saving grace in lots of senses. But on the flip of that, the people actually that we were in talks with, we kept the sort of door open, shall we say, and kept the conversation going through that sort of very concerning time, obviously, and nobody was quite sure what was going to happen. But I'm pleased to say that those people did, you know, eventually they sort of kept in touch over that period of time, and sort of we integrated them, and they have then did start to work with us, and they have been with us since, actually, which is very nice, I think. So you know, something that says critical business decisions sort of off the back of it, in terms of sort of staff and that side of things. And we had to make quick decisions and move around accordingly. In terms of how we operated, we always set up very, very nimble, is the word I use. So that was purely down to budget, or lack of budget, shall we say. We were a very, very typical startup, you know, laptop, phone in a dream, shall we say, and just went out there. But that made us that we were very agile, and we didn't sort of take on or have the burden of those sort of bigger overheads at the time. So it sort of probably worked a little bit, and I don't like to use these words, but a little bit sort of positively for us, because we were able to sort of pick up our office as such and carry on working from home, because we were always set up that way right from the get-go. And how we tuned sort of phone lines and all those little things of where companies perhaps hadn't considered before, about what happens when the phone rings in an office, where does that go, how does that pick up. You know, we were already doing those things, so it was a very, I hate using the word again easy, but it was a very easy transition into that period of time, because obviously there was such a lot of bad going on in the world. And don't get me wrong, you know, we lost probably 60-65% of our business overnight on that first lockdown. So what we'd worked for over that first 2 years was wiped out in 12 hours, basically, with buyers and sellers pulling out of transactions. So whilst we were able to sort of move the business quite easily, the business has said, you know, there was a lot that we lost out of that, more than half, that we then had to sort of sit down. And what I did is I went back to what I call startup mode, basically, Sarah. I went, right, okay, so we're 2 years in, we were moving forward with this. We don't know how long this is going to last, etc. So let's go back to what we were on day one, and let's sort of put it out that way. And that's what I did, basically. And I was then actually volunteering at Tesco during that time as well, during lockdown one. So kept my conversations going with local clients, etc., which was nice. So yeah. But yeah, lots of swings and roundabouts during that time, and still moving forward. You know, we're still 4 or 5 years old, so there's still decisions of what I'm making on a daily basis, and I'm trying to think longer term. You know, start with the end in mind. You know, that's difficult when pressures come and different things change, and it's very easy to lose sight of that. But still trying to retain that as much as I can with where we're looking with the business plan, etc.
Oh, amazing, thank you. That's so inspirational to know that it's okay to rewind and restart and roll your sleeves back up again and jump back in. So I'm really pleased that it's proven the successes to come after. So thank you for sharing. I know that the community will be interested to hear about your experiences. And and leads seamlessly onto my next question. What's your biggest learning you've had since becoming a business owner?
Biggest learning is people. I think it comes back down to people, and when you're trying to grow a business, everyone is going to be on slightly different pages, and that's, if you're adding people to the team, they're going to be at a different page to people that have been on the team for obviously a period of time, and making sure I think if I was to go back and have my time again, I'd sort of try and build out those systems or procedures or documents, shall we say, of here's what we do when, sooner rather than later, to help with when we onboard people and bring people on. So there's sort of like a bit of a Bible reference to refer to. Having said that, as a typical starter, I've over the last obviously 4 or 5 years, there's been big shifts. So what we've done has changed accordingly. So it hasn't been here's what we do, here's how we do it, and I'm going to leave it like that for 5 years. I've changed lots of things all the time, and I'm still doing that to this day, to try and be progressive and sort of ahead of the curve, so to speak, or at least try and get on the curve. And keep pushing forward. So it's one of those, and how that's documented and how that's detailed is something that you can tell I'm still considering. What is the best way to do that? How is that done? How does that work with the people that are involved? But yeah, people, managing the fact that everyone's on different pages, and sort of how the business relates to that basically as well, is something that I think I could do better, but there are reasons as to why, when you're trying to sort of constantly change and evolve, or being forced to as well. So but there we go. Yeah,
thank you. I love your honesty, it's brilliant. So here's a big question. If you were looking back at your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself?
It can do this very simple, 3 words: just keep going.
And would you have listened to your 18-year-old self?
That is a good question. That's my answer. I'd like to think so, but honestly, I think like anything in life, you learn more as you grow older. Would I have listened to that? I would have done, but I'd have still sort of, I was very different when I was that age, and he'd have gone, okay. I take it on board, certainly, and I'd like to think I would. Yeah, I'd say just keep going.
Yeah, you got there in the end, by the easy way or the hard way.
I think so, somehow. Yeah.
Perfect. And then my last question for today is, what inspires you? What keeps you going now?
I get people again. So I used people earlier on, and I think to sort of help people. What we do, essentially in estate agency, yes, we sell houses, but we're I think of it much broader than that. We're helping people move on to the next chapter of their lives, and the fulfillment that you get from that is fantastic. It's not always positive as well. People move for different reasons, but essentially they're moving on to the next phase of their life. And you're a very big part of that. You're one of the closest people to them during that phase of selling a property and buying a property, and to move them on to the next chapter, and do it as best as you can do it, and help as much as you can help. That's inspires me to literally help people achieve what they need or want to achieve on a daily basis through what I do. And that empowers me to help, and it goes on from there, I think.
Well, Dan, that wraps up the interview. Great job. Thank you so much for your pure honesty.
You're welcome.